You are now tuned into the Standard Podcast, where leadership meets accountability, and the standard is never lowered.
Hello, and good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Standard, and I'm your host, Martinez Roll. Listen, I am excited to be back with you this evening. It's been quite a little while, and a lot has been going on over the past couple of weeks. So, not going to be long today, but we're just going to dive into a few things that um, have been raising some issues. And so tonight's conversation is um, not about politics, but it is about leadership. And so over the past several weeks, Pompano Beach has found itself yet again at the center of a few important conversations, maybe three important conversations. And so we're going to talk about it a little bit here. Um, as I prepare to, dive in a little bit, um, I want to definitely give a quick shout out to Commissioner Beverly Perkins, who showed or exuberated great leadership, great service as a public servant. The past week, there was the celebration of life for Miss Miss Majo Fulton, which was a long time resident in the city of Pompano Beach. She lived to be 109 years old. By far one of Pompano Beach's long lasting residents. Many of you may know, if you're in the Pompano Beach area, that the fire department, along with the commissioners and the mayor, several friends, family member, clergy, they would do a drive-by parade and celebrate her birthday. So um, I had the opportunity to see Commissioner Perkins fulfill a different role, and she served during the repast, spoke at the memorial service. She, along with Mayor Hardin, he spoke at the memorial as well. And I thought that they did a great job in terms of their speech and what they did say. Um, and of course, Beverly Perkins putting it out there that renaming her street after Miss Majo Fulton. So I thought that was very admirable, but more so her service to the family during the repast to serve, those individuals meant a lot because normally you don't see that side of commissioners and mayors. They typically do their part, say their spiel, and then they're out the door. But she stayed and she served, and she did it humbly and gracefully. And so, hats off to you, Commissioner Beverly Perkins, on a job well done in that aspect. So, let's talk about it. Um, we need to talk about it. And so I just want to say tonight, let's talk about when the money stops, leadership, redevelopment, and the future of Pompano Beach. Now, there were a few things that took place, and not only that, um, but they have the gun violence rally, the walk, due to the lives taken of two young individuals due to gun violence. And whatever the background story is, um, I'm sure that will come out through further investigations and whatever have you. But there was the gun violence walk and the forum that was held shortly after with, I believe, Circle of Brotherhood. Shout out to Circle of Brotherhood for jumping in immediately and having, an input along with Luther Campbell, who's running for Congress, District 20. Um, it's amazing that sometimes people use the loss or the grief of others for political gain. And whether you disagree or agree, um, from my observation, that's exactly what I saw. Because you can't take the loss of young people, then immediately dump politics into it. Because if it was that important about gun violence and the young people, I think we would have saw this type of rally, this walk, and those individuals who did speak. I think we would have saw this forum be held months back, maybe a year ago. I'm just saying, if we're looking at time. So to anyone that says it wasn't politically backed, I could look you to your face and say you're an absolute liar. Because it was. It was. And shame on all of you that used the grief of these grieving families. Shame on you. Shame on you. How dare you? How dare you? That's enough. I'm going to say on that. But how dare you? You know, that kind of got me stirred up. um, but first, Governor DeSantis, have you all seen the veto list by Governor Ron DeSantis? If you haven't, you should look at it. It's public records. Governor DeSantis has the 2026 veto list out. And guess who is on that list? City of Pompano Beach. Now, he vetoed state funding for several local projects, including improvements for to the North Side Drive, the expansion of the Pompano Beach Senior Center, and the stormwater improvement project. Now, those decisions leave residents wondering whether what happens next, for the infrastructure of flooding and services that may believe to be important to our community, because they are very important. But we're on the veto list, if you had not known. Then at the city commission meeting, another conversation unfolded. This one about the future of the Community Redevelopment Agency, or as you know it to be, the CRA. Now, during the discussion, questions were raised about the operations behind the CRA. Should it continue beyond the current sunset period? Um, the discussion developed more so about, are the right things being done with the use of the CRA? I can tell you this is that the CRA serves a purpose, but when they stop serving that purpose and the mission that it stands for, then we have to question it. And it's okay to question it. Many residents are watching what's happening. And the future of the CRA is also about leadership. It is about a public debate. It is how difficult decisions should be handled in the open. And when questions are asked, it bothers me that the current leadership sit in the posture of carelessness, complacency, as though they don't owe the public any explanation as to what they're doing with the funding that they're receiving to take care of its local communities. So, which brings me to this question: why is getting rid of social services in the city of Pompano even on the table for discussion? Why is that? As much as you want to have an entertainment, an innovative district, you always will have a need for social services. Because let's face it, the city alone can't get the job done. And that's why you have a surplus of nonprofit organizations that are willing to do the job that you, the city, refuse to do. I went to the meeting uh, a few weeks ago, and they had social services speaking, and she talked about how they want to get rid of that particular division, and they're doing most of the work, and they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, providing adequate and essential services to this community. At some point, Pompano leadership, you got to turn into Michael Jackson and be the person to look yourself in the mirror. What are you doing? And and it's funny because I speak to a colleague of mine, and we oftentimes make a joke. When people are running for office, and you hear different ones in the community, and they say, "Well, what have you done?" And that's the question I have for you who are running for office, running for reelection, those who are candidates, especially those who are running for reelection. Listen, what have you done? Can you really answer that boldly, straight face, and lay it all on the table and say, this is what we've done. This is what I've done. This is what I put into place. This is the solution behind this particular problem, or I added this as a benefit to the people, what have you done? I'm actually going in a totally different direction than what I was going to speak about tonight. But I think this is where God wants me to go with tonight, because that wasn't the only thing that was brought up in uh, that happened in the most recent weeks. Now, to be fair, people, to be fair, to be fair, people may have different views about what happened or what's happening, but there was another issue that took place where three city commissioners, and my mind you, Commissioner Fezzik, if you do see this, I would like to say that you brought up great questioning. You put the burden of proof on the city manager, who has been dodging much of the questions that you, Commissioner Fournier, Commissioner Perkins bring before him. Which is a good indication that when there's anything that seems fishy, seems a bit crooked or corrupt, follow the money. Not just on the surface level, but do a forensic audit to find the money. And usually the money trail will tell you why certain decisions are being made that absolutely makes no sense to the community, to this city, and the residents that live here. You asked great questions, you made a great statement. But here's where I disagree with you and your constituents. The fact that you got up, the three of you, and walked out of the commission meeting was unprofessional. It was distasteful, and it was a disgrace. In leadership, things will not always go how we want it, how we plan it. We may not always get the answers that we want in that moment. But darn it, the people voted for you to represent them in their better interest. So you still have to lead with the right integrity. And it was like watching the Golden Girls. That used to be a show. I think it was called Golden Girls. When I was growing up, and I think you had Blair, Paige, and uh, maybe it was Thelma, Thelma, Blair, and Paige, and that's what it reminded me of. But it was disgusting to see. It really was. Now, listen, some may agree, some may disagree, and that's fine. You have your own opinion to formulate. Some may believe that the commissioners had a legitimate reason for leaving. Others may feel that the public deserve a longer discussion. I am one of those people in the public that says we deserved a longer discussion, and it might have could have been had you not all walked out. But it doesn't look good, and it doesn't look favorable for you when you do those type of things. So we can't just, you know, look at the antics that we receive from Delvin King or from Mike or anyone else. Look at what we're seeing from the leadership. And if the head is infected, then what do you think the rest of the body is? I promise you, I don't want to preach to you, but I'm taking this of what your actions are bringing out. How do you expect for the community and the residents that live here to, you know, follow something than what they're seeing? This is what you're getting. You are supposed to be at the forefront of leadership. This is something that you have to look at yourselves individually and come to grips with. Stop trying to point fingers and find fault at everyone else. Search yourself. Search yourself. Well, Martinez, why do you seem to care so much? Because I do love my community. I love my city. I am Pompano Beach, born and raised on what they call 16th Avenue, which the old folk would call it Seaboard Highlands, the ugly corner. And I'm just one of the ones who was raised in a good home, middle class family that taught me standards, taught me proper leadership, taught me how to serve, taught me how to be humble and walk with integrity. And I believe that our residents in the city of Pompano are great people. I don't care what side of the track they come from. Everyone's story is their story. But we have to do better as far as leaders in this city. We have to do better. So, what does good leadership look like when millions of taxpayer dollars and the future of a community are on the line? Because whether we're talking about a governor's veto in Tallahassee or a debate inside City Hall, the consequences for the people who live, work, and invest here are all the same. Tonight, we're going to slow the conversation down just a tad. And we're going to explain what a CRA actually is. We'll discuss why these state funded projects mattered and the options that the city may have moving forward. Why transparency and accountability uh, and thoughtful public debate matter. It's very essential to the public's trust. That's first. And this, again, isn't about choosing sides. I'm not trying to get you to choose a side, but it's about raising the standard for civic understanding. Now, I can tell you one thing from being certified in leadership and public value, that's one thing that I see that's lacking in a lot of the leadership. But hey, we're going to talk about it. So let's begin. So, hmm, well, before I do that, there was something that took place over the weekend or last week. I thought was phenomenal, and it actually took place in Miramar, in the city of Miramar. Um, so I just want to, share that with you for a moment. Just give you a little snippet of what took place in the city of Miramar, which was the Broward County Goon Bay Festival. Check this out. Awesome. Listen, I thought it was phenomenal. Great food, wonderful vendors, great public participation, and the organizers of this event. Job well done to the city of Miramar for hosting Broward County's Goombay Fest. It was a phenomenal event. So hats off to you all. So uh, let's connect some of the dots. Can we do that? Can we connect the dots? But before we begin with that, um, we have to have honest conversation whether the Community Redevelopment Agency or the CRA should continue. Personally, I think it should be vetted every 3 years, vetted with complete financial audits on every dollar received, every dollar spent, where it went, how was the decision made, and if its projects warrant the type of spending that it is giving. That's just my personal opinion. But the CRA, it wasn't created by the city of Pompano. It actually was authorized under federal law. Under federal law, it was organized under federal law to address areas that have experienced long-term economic challenges, deteriorating the infrastructure and declining property values or conditions that have been underlined or identified as slum and blight. Now, the idea is straightforward. As a redevelopment occurs, property values increase within the CRA districts. So, the increase in property tax happens, known as the tax increment financing, is reinvested back into the same area. Now, these dollars can be used for public infrastructure, streetscapes, affordable housing, economic development, and public safety improvements, and other projects that support revitalization. I believe that's very important to note. So, what's important in all of that I just said? The dollars can be used for economic development, affordable housing, public safety development, and other projects that support revitalization. Goes back to my opening there where I said, why are we even discussing City of Pompano, you getting rid of social services? Again, so the question isn't whether redevelopment should happen, but the question is whether redevelopment is producing measurable results for the people who already live here. While so many other opportunities are being created for future generations, you still got to worry about those who remain. And I know that we want to say, well, I'm doing this for my kids and my kids' kids. That's great. And you should. But what about you that still remain? Have you thought about that? Have you? That's why discussions about extending or ending the CRA matter. It's not simply about an expiration, doing away with, but it's more so about vetting its process and what they do with the funding. It's about whether or not the mission of the CRA is even being accomplished, whether the work is being done or it's unfinished, whether the model itself is evolving or it is something that needs to be revisited. Those are all policy questions. They deserve thoughtful debate, but they also deserve supported answers, not just assumptions. So I want us to connect the dots on this, if we can. Let's just connect the dots a bit. And let's do it by like this. Okay. Within a short period of time, Pompano Beach experienced two significant financial conversations, right? The veto of Riverside Drive and the veto of the Pompano Beach Senior Center, or the expansion of the Pompano Beach Senior Center. Stormwater project. And that's one of the major infrastructures that you need is, to ensure that wastewater infrastructure is present. But we did not receive the funding. And several other cities did not also. But I'm just talking about City of Pompano for today. Then, of course, came the discussion of, the CRA. Now, while these do seem or may seem like separate events, they point out the same challenge. The challenge is, how does growing the CRA, or how does growing the city continue and investing in the future when the funding sources become very uncertain? How does it? If state dollars aren't available, where does the money come from? Where does the city reprioritize the existing funds? Because there's already certain funds allocated. Question is, does it pursue federal grants? Does it phase projects over a longer extended timeline? Or are some projects delayed indefinitely? And we saw that currently with yesterday's city hall meeting, right? City hall packed out with the Harrah's casino uh, exec- executives, pardon me, all to push the building of the Costco project in Palm Air. First of all, why are we even talking about Costco when we don't even have what you guys promised us in building the downtown? Questions that need answering, needs answers. But these aren't easy decisions. No, they're not. But they do require these are questions that local governments face every single day. And as taxpayers, uh, understanding these choices is just as important as knowing the final vote because we want to get to the bottom line. Well, what's the bottom line? But I understand. So, what does leadership look like? You know, leadership is tested when everybody doesn't agree. The questions become difficult. And as I try and bring this down a little bit. Um, Cities don't become great because they never face difficult decisions. In fact, that's what makes a great city. That's what makes great leaders is when you have to be faced with the difficult decisions. They become great because their leaders and their citizens choose to face those decisions with honesty, courage, and the commitment for the common good. The future of the CRA, it will be debated. Future budgets will be debated. And state funding, it will come and it will also go. But one thing should never change is the expectations that the public servants have to lead with the integrity and that the public dollars are managed with stewardship. That every resident has the opportunity to understand how those decisions affect their everyday life. Listen, at the standard, our goal it isn't to tell you what to think. Our goal is to just give you the information, the context, and the questions that you can vet the process yourself. It allows you to critically think on your own. Because I learned this from Apostle Ronald Harper of I Am Kingdom Ministries. He said this several years ago. He says, information without application is abortion. And to this day, that is still so profound because it is the truth. An informed community is stronger when they know. Listen, I am Martinez Roll. I thank you greatly for joining in with the standard. Until next time, don't just expect the standard, live the standard, be the standard. God bless you all. See you next week. Remember, be the standard. God bless.